So we're going to talk about first-time users versus returning users and how to access the ethics lobbying application as a whole. We always encourage people to go through our main website to log in or access our lobbying application. For those of you that might not be sure, our main website is ethics.ny.gov. And you'll actually see the front page of our website up on the screen currently right now. You can use, we usually prefer Google Chrome for an internet browser or Microsoft Edge, but using Firefox or Safari, any of those should work just fine. So once you have brought up our main website, again, ethics.ny.gov is the web address. We are, it'll bring you to what you see on your screen right here. This is the front page of our website. You'll notice there's some categories across the top as you get there. The first one that we're going to focus on is the lobbying tab. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're just going to hover over it with your mouse, and it's going to give you a drop down. You're not going to click on it, you're going to hover over it. Okay, and that will give you the drop down menu. And we are going to click the very first one there. It says File Online. Okay, and that's going to bring you into the lobbying application information. For logging in purposes, I have everybody just scroll down a little bit. It's pretty self-explanatory. You'll see the orange-colored screen here. It says accessing the online lobbying application. There are two things here. This is very important. If you've ever used in the last 5 years that the lobbying application has been around, chances are you are a returning user. So you're always going to go through the returning users link. You can find that on the right-hand side here. Okay, and that means that, and how do I know if I'm a returning user? I get a lot of those questions. You're a returning user if you have completed the enrollment link in the past, you have created a username and a password for ny.gov, and you have created an individual user profile within our lobbying application. Okay, they are a little bit different from each other, but that would be what you would need to complete to qualify as a returning user. For those of you that have never used our application before, you would go through a one-time deal, which is called the enrollment link. And you see this on the left-hand side. Okay. Again, you're only going to do this once, and it will lead you through the steps of creating a username and password if you don't have one already, and I'll explain that in just a minute. And it will ultimately bring you to creating a user profile, individual user profile in the lobbying application, okay? Which ultimately, once you complete that, will bring you to your individual dashboard, and we'll get to that in just a moment. So I won't go through, since many of you, I believe, are already returning users, I don't want to go through the complete enrollment link. I'm just going to touch on this real quick. So for those that are brand new to our application, like I said, you're going to go through, you're going to click on the enrollment link because you're a first-time user. And actually, the very first question that comes up is, do you have an existing account at my.ny.gov? For those of you that are out of state, most likely you probably don't. You might, but you probably don't. Those are the chances. Chances are you probably will not have one of the my.ny.gov accounts. For those of you who are in New York State, it's maybe about 50-50. You know, you got to remember, ny.gov is what we, I like to use the door to a front house reference. ny.gov is basically a portal that allows you to have access to many different agencies throughout the state. For example, some of you might do your Department of Motor Vehicles business on through ny.gov. Okay, some of you might do your taxes. Okay, and you have access to tax and finance through ny.gov. So in that case, most likely you would actually have a my.ny.gov account. But everybody's different. If you're not sure, you can always give the commission a call here at our lobbying help desk, and they can help you kind of figure that out. So for this demonstration, like I said, we're just going to go through this real quick. And it says, do you have an existing account at my.ny.gov? I want to say no. So what's going to happen here, it's going to bring up how to create a new account in ny.gov. Now, this is not to be confused with creating an individual profile for the lobbying application. They are two different things. Again, I want to reiterate the fact that ny.gov is like the front door of a house. It gives you access to get, that front door gives you access to get into these different agencies. Some people might have 3 doors within the house to open up, whether it be tax or finance or our ethics lobbying application. Some people might only have 1. It really all depends upon the individual. So that being said, this is where you would create your actual username and a temporary password. I say temporary because once you go through the steps and the prompts, it will prompt you to create a what we call like a final password, you know, about a minute or 2 down the road. We won't get through all that today, but this is ultimately how you would start it. Desired username. We get a lot of questions about what should be their desired username. I believe that I've actually had conversations with the folks up at ny.gov. They, some of the questions we get from our callers is, can I use my email address? The answer to that is no. Based upon my conversations with people at ny.gov, they really kind of frown on people using email addresses as a username. There's a variety of different reasons as to why. What I have suggested to people, and it seems to work over the last several years, is that you create first initial, last name, and then like a 4 or 5 digit number as your username. You got to remember, there are millions of people in New York State that use ny.gov. So to avoid having a duplicate username, we want to kind of make it somewhat unique to yourself as an individual. So one other point I'd like to point out, from this point forward, everything is case sensitive, and that includes our lobbying application. Once you get in there, if you put a capital letter in there, people are going to remember it, or you know, the system remembers it. So just be kind of be you know, aware of that as you're creating your username and your password. One thing I want to say about the passwords is that ny.gov requires them to be at least 14 characters long. Okay, you can have it more than 14 characters, but it has to have at least 14 characters. And the stipulation there is that you have to have at least 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, and 1 special character included within those passwords. Okay, and then it's pretty self-explanatory from here. You'll fill out your first name, last name, anything with a red asterisk next to it, that means it's required. Well, I get a lot of questions about email. The email address you want to use for this, if you don't have an ny.gov account, I would strongly suggest using the email that you use, that you're going to use in the lobbying application for your individual user profile, the one that you plan on getting the e-blasts or alerts from the commission. So for today's demonstration, we are actually going to be logging in as a returning user. But I just wanted to show everyone this is what first-time user, what they'll go through. And then once you add user, you'll get a successful message saying that it's been created successfully and to proceed to the lobbying application. So we're going to go back to the returning users page here. Okay, so many of you are returning users. This is where you are going to And then we're just going to sign in. One thing, before I actually sign in here, one thing I just would like to suggest, a lot of times your ny.gov password will pre-populate in there. My strong suggestion is, if you know and you're absolutely certain what your password is, type it in. Because sometimes if you have different ny.gov usernames for other agencies, it sometimes will populate the last one that was in there, and it might not be the proper password. So always try to type the password in there. So now we're going to sign in. Okay, so this is going to bring you actually into ny.gov. This is like what I call the front door of the house. Okay? And it will give you the message that you're logged in, and it should have your username up there, the date, and then down below here, it will have all the services that you have access to, one of which should be the ethics lobbying application. Depending on the individual, like I said earlier, you might have 3 here, you might have 5, you might have 10. It really all depends on what you have connected to ny.gov. But one thing everybody should have is, if you're a returning user, is this ethics lobbying application tab. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. All right. So that brings us to our individual dashboard. Okay. In this case, this user's name is Mark Johnson. Okay. When you guys log into your individual dashboards, and I'm going to make a little bit of a note here for everybody. This is much different than our old legacy application. Some of you might remember the legacy application prior to this that was released in 2019. It is a little bit different as far as who is logging in. The old system, and to this day, a lot of people still think that when you are logging into the lobbying application, you are logging in as an organization, and that is simply not true. This application, you are logging in as an individual, so it's quite different. So everybody's dashboard should look similar, but there are certain things that are different depending on the individual that's logging in. So that's why in this case we see Mark Johnson's name at in the upper right-hand corner. And you always know that you're on the dashboard, which we otherwise call the home base, okay? You can always return to the dashboard. If you get lost in the system, just click dashboard, it'll bring you right back. In this case, it just refreshes because we're already there. So we're on our dashboard. One thing I want to mention is everybody sees their name in the upper right-hand corner, but they don't really know what to do from there. We're just going to click on Mark Johnson's name right here. And this is going to bring you into the individual profile. This is what all users create. Remember how I had said earlier, you create an ny.gov account, but you also create an individual user profile for the lobbying application, and that's exactly what this is right here. So this is, in this case, this has got all Mark's information as an individual. You'll notice it has his business street address, business phone number, contact email. If anything ever changes in here, a lot of people wonder where do they go to change it. Hey, Brian, I got a different phone. I need to change my phone number. This is exactly where you would go to do it. And you just do that by clicking the edit button in the upper right-hand corner, and that throws it into editing mode. And then you would make such changes, wherever, in this case, the phone number or the email. And then you would just go down to the declaration once the changes have been made, check mark the box, and you're going to hit save. It's going to prompt you for an effective date of change. So if that change happened just today, and for this demonstration, that's what we're going to use is today's date. that's what you would choose. If it happened last week, you would put that date in. Whatever the date of change is what you're going to select. So we're just going to select today. This is very important. This will bring up your form selection. It is very important, if you ever see this message, to always make sure that you're checking the last box that says check if not updating filings. Okay, because we're not updating any filings. We're just doing a profile update. And then we're going to hit submit. And that brings you back to the top of the individual profile. One other thing I'd like to touch on that a lot of people are not aware of is this individual ID. Okay, if you look at my cursor, it's right up here. It's in the upper left-hand corner of the user profile. Okay, in this case, Mark Johnson's individual ID number is 824. I strongly suggest, and many of you have heard me mention this over the phone before, to make sure you write that individual ID down with your username and password. It's very important. Not just if we ever have to look you up in the system, it makes it 10 times quicker, but if you ever have an authorized role, say if you're a delegated administrator or chief administrative officer on an organizational profile, that number will need to be provided in order to get you affiliated to those organizational profiles. Okay? So that's about it with the individual user profile. One other thing to note, this does need to be recertified at least once a year. I'm sure most of you know about that. And what do I mean by recertification? It just means going in once a year. And I'll just go back to the dashboard so I can show you from the beginning. You're going to click on your name in the upper right-hand corner. You're going to put it in editing mode. You're going to review all the information, mostly business street address, business phone number, contact email. And if there's no changes, again, you're just going to check mark the declaration, hit save, hit today's date, and again, make sure you check that last box that says that you're not updating the filings and hit submit. And that's all there is to recertifying an individual profile. So what we want to do now is we're going to move on to checking out what an organizational profile, because remember, they are different. Okay? Individual user profiles they look the same, but they are different and have a different meaning than an organizational profile. So we're going to go back out to our dashboard here. Okay. And if you are affiliated or connected to any organizational profile, you can find that by looking under affiliated organizations, and that's located here on the left-hand side, okay, just a little bit further down from where the lobbyist files are. Okay, in this case, Mark Johnson is connected to an organization named Mag Designs. Okay. Now, one thing to note, if you are not affiliated, if you're a brand new user and not affiliated, you will not see this affiliated organizations box until you are connected to at least one organization. And in that case, you would have to get connected, obviously. And we'll go over that in a little bit. So in order to check out what an organizational profile looks like, we are just going to click the little view button here. And that's going to bring up Mag Design's organization profile. As you can see, it is similar, not the same, but it is similar to an individual user profile. But as you can see, Mark Johnson is located, he is actually connected as a delegated administrator and a CAO on the org profile for Mag Designs. So we're just going to scroll down a little bit, and you can see it has a lot of the same information in here, but this would be the organization's business street address, the best contact phone number for the organization. You don't have to have an alternative phone number. In this case, they have one in here. It is recommended, but it's not mandatory. Anything with a red asterisk, and you'll notice when filling these out, Anything with a red asterisk is a mandatory field. And then just email, alternate email, and that's about it for the organizational profile. Now, we do get a lot of questions as to, well, Brian, what's a delegated administrator? What's this delegated administrator or CAO? Very simple. Delegated administrator, and you'll notice there's two spots from it, and I'll explain that in a minute. The delegated administrator is the individual that would usually, actually physically do the filings. The person that would keep the business street address, contact phone number, emails all updated. All right, so they have editorial, privileges to the organizational profile, so they keep all that updated. So that's your delegated administrator. Now, CAO is that stands for Chief Administrative Officer. And a lot of people still don't understand what that means, but that is just what we would call the responsible party, okay? The person that actually signs off on the filings, the person that oversees the filings. It can be the same person as the delegated administrator. It might be two different individuals. It really depends on the organization. Every organization is different. Just one thing to note, if it is two different people, everybody that goes into this lobbying application needs to have their own individual user profile, okay? One other note that we get is, well, there's two delegated administrator spots here. The reason there is two is you're only mandated to have one, but if, say, they added a second option, so say if somebody wanted to delegate responsibilities out or have a backup, somebody goes out on vacation, you do have the option of having a second delegated administrator on the organizational profile. It really isn't necessary to have the same person in both delegated administrator spots. But if there's somebody that would, say down the road, Mark decided to hire, Susie Smith, and said, Susie Smith, I'm going to make you my backup on the lobbying application. Susie Smith would ultimately go through the enrollment link, create a user profile, just like a first-time user, and then she would ultimately give Mark her individual ID number, and then they would just they would go in here, they would add it. In this case, we'll just use Mark's individual ID. And then all the information appears for that individual ID. Okay. And then if you ever have to remove somebody, you would just click these X's right here, and they go away. So that's pretty much it for the basics of the organizational profile. I do just want to touch on a couple of these tabs that were on the left-hand side. So we won't go through all of them. I know most of you are very familiar with these. But we'll just touch base real quick. Obviously, right now we're on the organization information. That's the first tab. That's for the organization profile. Over on the left-hand side here, you'll see individual lobbyists. For those of you that have employed or retained lobbyists, or for public corps, it will read as in-house lobbyists. It's always important just to make sure that your organization keeps all of their information up to date. Again, if you ever need to edit any of the individual lobbyists or in-house lobbyist information, you would just go click on this tab right here. And again, there's the edit button right there. You put it into editing mode, and you're able to make any changes going forward. And you would actually, if it's just one specific one, you can actually click on the little pencil icon. Again, like if they got a new phone number, that's where you would be able to edit. And say we're adding a brand new individual lobbyist, you would just click this green tab right there, and there's the information. Fill out the information, and you would just click Add at the end. And that would add it to your list of individual lobbyists. So then that brings us down to, so it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. If you ever have any questions, you run into any trouble with that, you can always contact our help desk, and one of our team members over at the help desk can definitely assist you with that. We are now looking at the Authorized Preparer tab. Okay, so a lot of people don't really understand what the Authorized Preparer is versus a delegated administrator and a CAO. So an Authorized Preparer is, a lot of times, certain organizations will hire somebody or delegate somebody out to be just the person that does the filings. And that has happened, you know, in some cases, not all. And this is where, again, they would still need an individual ID number and a user profile. Like I said, everybody that goes in here needs to have, has to have a username and password and an individual user profile. So in this case, this individual is what we call an authorized preparer. They are only, they only have the privileges to actually do filings, to have access to the filings. They do not have editorial rights to the organizational profile. So the authorized preparer cannot come out here and make any changes within this organizational profile. They can only have access to the actual filings for that organization. And then it's important to note the affiliations. These are either the individuals or the organizations that are actually affiliated to this organizational profile in this mag design. And in this case, it's mag designs. And then just one other thing I kind of want to touch on is the forms. A lot of people have called me up, asked me, well, how do I access, you know, how do I access the registration that I just submitted? And this is where you would do it. You would go actually into the organizational profile, okay? Let me just go back here. So you're on the main page of the organizational profile. You'd click on the Forms tab. Okay, it's going to load all the forms that have been connected to Mag Designs. Okay, there's some tabs across the top. In this case, the registration. So we're just going to look at real quick how you would just open up a one of their registrations. So over here on the right-hand side, you'll select the year. So we'll just say the year that they're looking for is 2023. And you would just select, make sure the registration tab is highlighted, which it is. And we're going to select the ID. And that will open the form right up. And again, to get out of it, just click the backspace. If you're all finished with that, we can go back out to our dashboard. One thing I want to just go back and touch on real quick. I had mentioned the recertifying. I know a lot of people enjoy when it comes to that time of year to recertify the profiles. I want to go back into this organizational profile real quick. And again, it's the same way you would ultimately recertify your individual user profile, okay? Simply by going in, clicking the edit button, and just making sure everything is up to date. Again, business street address, business phone, contact emails. If everything looks good, just going to check and then save. Now, when it's a recertification, it'll have a recertify button there. Just click on that. For some of you, you might notice this comes up, this message comes up. It's a connection to NYBE. We always strongly suggest to click the None Match button going forward. The date would be today. And we are not updating any filings. Always make sure we check mark that not updating filings box, and we hit submit. And I believe I had mentioned, and if I didn't, I apologize, that these recertifications need to be done at least once per year. And those are needed, they are required in order to submit any type of filings. Who is required? It is the CAO of the organization. So in this case, Mark Johnson would be required to recertify his individual information, and the organization profiles need to be recertified once a year, and that's all in order to submit filing. So that's about it for the basics of the organization profile. Now we're going to get a little bit into how do we submit a statement of registration. So again, we're going to go back out to our dashboard. Again, we call it our home base. If you ever feel like you've got lost, that dashboard message will be always in the upper left-hand corner. Worst comes to worst, always click on that. It'll bring you back home. Okay. So from here, we're going to just go over, this is just going to be a basic walkthrough of, page by page of how to submit what we call a statement of registration. I will actually be bringing Brianna in here for some of this in just a few short minutes as we get more into the more detailed parts of it. Again, this is just a walkthrough. Any registration-specific type of questions, you could always reach out to us here in the lobbying unit and contact a filing specialist in the registrations unit. So that being said, we're going to now look under lobbyist filings to start a registration. I'm going to click the registration button. We're going to select the lobbyist or public corporation name. And in this case, for this demonstration, we're going to use Mag Designs. Okay. Now, for employed lobbyists, the lobbyists that are only lobbying on their own behalf, this is actually pretty simple. You would just go in and click the Add button because the contractual client would be the same as the principal lobbyist. And then you can see the information comes right up. And the same thing with the beneficial client. You would just add the, click on the Add button, and up comes Mag Designs again. So for this demonstration, we are going to do, I believe we're just going to do a retained.
Yeah, we're going to show how to file a retained registration. So we're going to add the contractual and beneficial client name in those fields to begin the filing.
So again, we selected Mag Designs, but since this is going to be a retained statement of registration, we are going to add what we believe is going to be the contractual client. So how do we find the contractual client in this list? So usually if you have the contractual client name, it's pretty easy. You'll just start typing out. The contractual client's name. you should find it from that list. If you do not see it on the list, if it's a brand new organization that has never lobbied in New York State before, you can always create that by creating an orphan profile by clicking right here. It'll say, please click here if the organization is not listed, and then you would ultimately just create it for them. But in this case, Housing Improvement Corporation already exists in the system, came right up. And for this demonstration, we're going to say the Housing Improvement Corporation is also going to be the beneficial client as well. So we're just going to hit the add button. And there they are right there. So that's going to bring up our biennial period down below. For this demonstration, we're going to select 23-24 biennial registration period. Usually, if it's a brand new registration, you would just hit a start button. In this case, something's already been started, so we're just going to click the Save Not Submitted tab, and that's going to open it right up. And if you have started one and you click on the Save Not Submitted part, it'll open it up, and you'll notice there's a green Edit button there. You're always going to click that green Edit button just to get it into editing mode. Okay. One thing to note on here, you'll notice these tabs across the top, they're pretty self-explanatory. There is also an extension request button. For some of you that need to file extension requests, just a couple notes that if that is the case, the filing actually needs to be started in order to file an extension request. And then once in there, you would just click the tab, and this is pretty self-explanatory. And you would just fill the information out and then submit it. Okay. So this is the first page of your statement of registration. You'll notice that this is the co- and sub-lobbyist information form, if it's applicable. A lot of registrations do not even have a co- or sub-lobbyist, but there are, on occasion, some agreements that do. If you're not sure what a co- or sub-lobbyist is, and I encourage everybody to kind of get used to using these. I don't know how many people are aware of these. I call these the information buttons, and they're throughout every filing. You know, client semi-annuals, statement of registrations, bi-monthly reports. It's a little lowercase I, and I know it's kind of small, but if you look closely, there's a lowercase I there inside a blue circle. And the word help will pop up next to it. If you click on it, it will actually give you a complete definition of what a co-lobbyist is and what a sub-lobbyist is. So for this demonstration, we're just going to say that there are no co- and sub-lobbyists for this statement of registration. So we're going to close this out. And then we're going to go down and hit continue. And you'll notice here, this is where the beneficial client information will show up. Okay, so Housing Improvement Corporation already populates in there because we added it right before we got started. So it pre-populates in there. If for some reason you have a second or third beneficial client that say you forgot to add, not a problem. You'll just go right up to this little search bar here, start typing their the name of the organization in, that is a second or third beneficial client, and it should pop right up. You'll click on it, and then it will populate down below. Then we're going to hit continue, and that's going to bring us to our agreement information. And for this, I'm going to turn it over to Brianna, who is going to go through the agreement information, individual lobbyists, business relationships, lobbying subjects, and the lobbying activities.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so now we're in the lobbying activities tab. And what you're going to want to do in this tab is this is where you're going to upload your lobbying agreement or authorization. But first, you're going to need to select the type of lobbying relationship. So for this registration, it's retained, and then the level of government. You would choose whatever selections applicable: state lobbying, municipal lobbying, or both. And I've already uploaded a sample lobbying agreement authorization for this demonstration. But if you come into this tab, these fields would be blank here, and you would select Add Lobbying Agreement. And that would bring you to this screen. And to upload your lobbying agreement or authorization, you would select Attach Contract. You would locate that agreement, that signed agreement, on your computer, and then you would upload it, and it would attach here next to File. Under Description of Agreement, you would select one of the three applicable choices. The first radio button is anticipate the $5,000 threshold will be exceeded. It's important to note that there is a filing fee associated with the registration when you submit it, and you can pay that by credit card or check. It's $200 if you exceed the threshold if you submit the registration for the first half of the biennial, and it's $100 if you submit the registration during the second half of the biennial. For the other two options, you do not anticipate exceeding the $5,000 threshold, or it's a pro bono lobbying contract authorization. Those do not have a filing fee attached. Under reportable compensation expense information, you would select either reportable expenses only, and if you select that radio button, you would only be required to reflect the contract duration over in this section under contract duration compensation. If you select reportable compensation and expenses, you would be required to disclose the contract duration, and that is the contract start end date that's reflected in your lobbying agreement or authorization. And then you would also be required to disclose the compensation. Under the client signatory field, it's required for you to complete the last and first name of the client signatory and their title. That is generally the person, the client chief administrative officer, or whoever signed off on the lobbying agreement with the principal lobbyist. And to add the information over under contract duration and compensation, you would just select Add, but for now I'll select the pencil icon. And this is where you would select the contract start and end date, and if applicable, you would also add the compensation amount and select Save. If for some reason you need to edit this information, you would just do what I did before and select the pencil icon. Once all fields are completed, you would select Save so that you bring that information over to the registration filing, and it would appear here. It's important to note that you can edit any of the fields here before the registration is submitted. However, after it's submitted, the only part that you cannot edit through a registration amendment is the lobbying authorization contract that was uploaded. But you can submit a registration amendment to upload a new contract or revised contract, or to edit the line here from description over. Supporting documents and information is just another section that you most likely won't use on your original registration submission. But if you need to ever file a registration amendment in the future with supporting documents, say a client name changed, you would upload that document here. Then we're going to select Continue. And this is the Individual Lobbyist tab. So to add an individual lobbyist onto your statement of registration, you would select Modify. Over to the left, it lists all the lobbyists that are currently in your organization profile. So that's why it's really important to periodically check the Individual Lobbyist tab in your organization profile so that you're able to update and make sure everybody's information is current, and if somebody isn't listed, you can input them there. To move them over to the statement of registration, you would just select their names individually, and they would be brought over to the right. And don't panic, like if you get into the registration filing and you realize, oh, there isn't a person listed here, you would just select the Add New Individual Lobbyist button, and you would be able to add them this way. And after you put in their information, you would select Add, and they would be reflected over here to the left for you to bring over onto your registration filing. And they would also be reflected in your organization profile. So once you've added all your individual lobbyists, you would select Save Changes. And this box always appears update additional filings. It's really not a box that's used most of the time, so we recommend that you just select close. If the individual lobbyist is considered designated, or you're unsure if they're designated, you can also, like Brian mentioned, select the information icon, and it will give you a definition of what a designated lobbyist is. If they are designated, the way that we can tell that they are is that you would select the designated checkbox. Then we go to continue, and this brings you to the business relationships tab. So if you have no reportable business relationship, you would select no. If you do, you would just select yes. And if you haven't actually submitted an RBR but you need to, you can do so by selecting create new RBR, complete that filing, and then go back to your saved registration, and it would be uploaded here. Then we're going to select continue, and this is the lobbying subjects tab. So right here, there's a pre-populated list of subjects for you to select from. If you know your specific subject, you can start typing it in. If you're unsure, you can type the asterisk in, and it will give you the full list for you to find the applicable selection. Next, we're going to click continue and go to the lobbying activities tab. So here's where you're going to report state and municipal focuses and parties that you anticipate engaging in. So the first question, you would pick the types of lobbying communications. So it would either be direct, grassroots lobbying, both, or monitoring only. Then under lobbying focuses, you would choose a focus that you, or if it's unknown, you can select unknown, but if you have a focus that you anticipate lobbying on, you can do so by selecting that. And then you would type in the specific bill number that you'd be lobbying and select enter on the keyboard, and it would appear below. If you have multiple bills, you can, or focuses, you can type them in here and separate it out by a comma, but be sure to not put a space in between. And when you select process, those would appear below here. If you're unsure and need to add a description, if identifying number is unknown, I added a sample description down here, but you would select this link, and then you would type that description in the box here. If you have any questions on how to disclose this, you can always contact the lobbying help desk for assistance, but also this information icon gives you kind of a nice set of guidelines as to the correct or incorrect way to have these focuses reflected on the registration. Then if you scroll down, the last part is if you have any parties that you lobbied or expected to be lobbying, you would select no if you do not and yes if you do. Again, it's a pre-populated list, and if you know the party name, you can type it in, or you can type in the asterisk, and you can select the applicable choice, or you can select not known at this time. It's important to note here that this is what the parties that you anticipate lobbying. What you actually lobby will be disclosed in more detail in your corresponding bi-monthly filings. Then you would select continue, and you would be brought to the attestation tab. Now I'm going to pass it back to Brian, and he's going to complete the registration filing with you and show you how to submit your filing fee if that's required.
Thank you, Bree. So that brings us to the final page of the filing, what we call the attestation. Just a little bit of note, and a question we get quite often is when people get to the attestation page on any filing, whether it be a statement of registration, a bi-monthly report, or a client semi-annual report, they say, oh, do I hit continue now? No. The attestation is the last page for that particular filing. So you would not hit continue after you fill out the declaration, and you would actually hit submit, the green submit filing, which you can find right above here. So assuming everything is correct at this point, and you're ready to submit the filing, you are going to check mark the box. We're going to hit the green submit filing. And if everything looks okay, and and the system doesn't find any corrections that need to be made, you will get this message that says you are being redirected to the payment portal. And just keep in mind, it has a message there as well that the filing is not completely submitted, okay, until the payment has been successfully processed, whether it be by credit card or by check. So what we're going to do is, and a lot of people ask about this too, they see the spinning wheel there, you actually have to hit the OK button to move to the next step. So that brings us to the payment processing. This is where ultimately you're going to choose the option to pay by credit card or by check, and you would just optimally select either or. Let's just, if you're paying by check, you just put the check number in, the amount that it's for, and hit the Pay Now. For credit card, obviously, you would hit Pay Now, and it's going to prompt you to check out, and that's where you would ultimately put your credit card information and just follow the prompts, and you would submit. So once the payment is all set and squared away, it will bring you to, this is extremely important. Once the payment goes through, you want to get a filing submitted page. And this is actually printable. You can actually print the page out. A lot of people do just for their own records. What's important about that filing submitted page is not just the fact that you get the filing submitted message, but it also has on there what we call an LRO number. Okay, it's like a confirmation number, and you can see that actually right here. Okay, that's also for your records. What's even more important about that is that if you are paying by credit card, whereas the commission doesn't issue formal receipts, that sheet would actually act as a receipt if you need to be reimbursed for the fee. But it is very important to get that filing submitted message. For some reason, if you encounter a situation where you do not get a filing submitted message with an LRO number or a credit card authorization number, I encourage you to contact our lobbying help desk right away so we can look into that. So that's it for a statement of registration. So what we're going to do now is, we have one other thing we're going to discuss during this morning. I can just get back here. Stand by for 1 second. All right, there we go. We're going to go back to our dashboard. So one last thing that I wanted to touch on is something that was new this year that was implemented, and that's the ethics training for lobbyists and clients. Now, I'm not going to go over any of the content of the training, but just some basic, where to find it and who is required to take the training and how to actually attest to the training once it's completed. So, that being said, the ethics training itself is actually found on our website. And I will just show you guys where you can find that. So you're going to go to ethics.ny.gov. Okay. And there's the familiar tabs across the top. You're going to go to Education. And about the third one down is an actual tab that says Ethics Training for Lobbyists and Clients. So you'll just click on that. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's a link right in the website. If you just scroll down, and there it is. You would just click on that, and that starts the training. So let's just say you've gone through, you've completed the training. A lot of people have mentioned to us into our lobbying application. All right, just sign in as with your username and password. And there is, once you get into your dashboard, there is actually a tab over on the right-hand side that says Report Training. So we're just going to click on the Training tab. And there's the hereby, you're going to just check mark that you took it, the date that you took it, and then you're going to submit. Okay. Okay. And then you'll get a message on top that says successfully submitted the training. If you are still unsure, I can show you within your individual profile where you would find your training status. We're just going to go right back out to the dashboard again. We're going to go to your individual profile. Again, that is your name in the upper right-hand corner. And there is an actual tab right there that says Training. You would just click on that, and that should bring up the status. So as you can see, Mark Johnson has completed the ethics and lobbying training for this year, and he is good to go for the next 3 years, as it is required every 3 years. A lot of the questions we get is who is required to, actually take the training. Pretty simply, it is all individual lobbyists. Okay? If you are an individual lobbyist or a CAO, a client CAO on a statement of registration for the 23-24 biennial period, you are required to take the training. If you're not sure, you can always, especially for clients, if you're not sure, you can definitely contact your lobbyist, and they might be able to explain that a little bit better. So that's about it. I am going to turn it over to Brianna right now. I believe we do have some questions that are coming in.
Okay, thank you so much, Brian. This is extremely helpful. And thank you all for attending today. We noticed that there are some questions in the chat that we're going to be able to answer. The first question that we were going to touch base on was showing you where the employee drop-down box is on the statement of registration. So if Brian can open up, select View next to Mag Design.
Hi, Bree. It's Marlena. Could you just speak up just a little bit louder? We're getting some folks who are having a hard time hearing.
Yep. So if you can, Brian, go to the Forms tab, and then we're going to open up the employed registration for Mag Designs. So Employed is a lobbying organization that does lobbying on their own behalf. So they would be the principal lobbyist, the contractual client, and the beneficial client. And if you can select Edit, and you're going to go down to the Lobbying Activities tab, this is where you would reflect if you are employed or retained. I'm sorry, the Agreement Information tab. So right here, what you would do is when you get to the Agreement Information tab, under Type of Lobbying Relationship, you would select Employed. And then that would tell us that you are submitting an employed registration. Based on the information above, you being the principal lobbyist, contractual, and beneficial client, and then under the Type of Lobbying Relationship. Which leads into another question: how can you remove lobbyists when individuals leave the organization? So if an individual terminates or leaves the organization, you would first go to your organization profile. under the Affiliated Organizations widget and select View. Then you would go to the Individual Lobbyist tab, and you would select Edit, and you would locate that person's name, who is currently listed as an individual lobbyist. You would select the pencil icon, and then you would put their termination date, the date that they no longer are working for your organization or doing lobbying. And then you would select the declaration box, click Save, and their termination date would appear over here in the right column. But that's the first step. The second step after you've completed that is going to Forms, locating any registrations that they are currently listed on, and selecting, I'll wait because it takes a few minutes to load. You would select the registration that they are listed on, and in this case, this is a save filing, but you would select Amend, and then you would go down to the Individual Lobbyist tab. You would select Modify. You would click on their name. Their name would then be removed from the lobbyist authorized on registrations to lobbyist listed on organization profile. Select Save Changes. Again, click Close here. Then you would go, if there's nothing else that you need to change on this registration, you would go to the attestation box. You would select the declaration, and then you would provide the effective date of change. And if you're only removing the individual lobbyist, you would generally use the effective date of when they terminated here to show that as of this date, they are no longer doing lobbying. One of our next questions is, what if you don't know exactly what bills or bill numbers you will be lobbying on during the upcoming session, but you know the issue but not the bill? So in that case, under the Lobbying Activities tab, you would scroll down and you would select state bill, municipal bill, whatever you anticipate that you might do lobbying on. And then you would select Add Description if identifying number is unknown. So right here, we'll select state bill. We'll select Add Description if identifying number is unknown. And then you would just put a brief description of the bill here and select Add, and it would be brought down below. If you have questions on how to correctly give us enough information on that, you would just select the information icon. And right here it shows you exactly how to disclose bill numbers and descriptions of bill numbers in this box here. Another question we had, these are all really great questions. None of my nonprofit employee individual lobbyists have access to our organization page on the lobbying app. Where would they go to certify? So an individual lobbyist, now that they have to certify for training, they are required to create a user profile in the lobbying application. However, they don't have access to view any of the filings because they're not listed in an authorized role. So the best way to have an employee individual lobbyist is to go on, I believe, on the public search query, and they can look up information on the filings there, anything you'd like to show them yourself. But the only individuals that have access to view what's been submitted in LA, all the filings and all the information in those filings, is only given to the CAO, delegated administrator, or the authorized preparers. The next one, this training is required every the Ethics for Lobbyists and Clients training. Yes, that's required every 3 years to go in and take, read through the training slides and then log into LA and certify that you took the training. So that's a great question too. Where is the ethics training on the website? I'm going to get back to that in a minute once I go through a few more questions, just because I don't want to log out of this profile and then go back in. Lobbyists, the next question is, lobbyists are the only ones that need to complete the registrations and not clients, correct? Yes, that is correct. A lobbyist is only required to complete a registration. Clients are then in turn every 6 months. If the $5,000 threshold is exceeded, they are required to submit client semi-annual filings. Another question, how do we check to see when our next due date for is for the ethics training. That's a great question. So you can do that within your user profile when you're logged in. So you would go to your name in the upper right-hand corner. You would select the training tab. And here it would tell you your status that you're trained, and it would also give you your next training due date. So another question, what if there's more than one lobbying focus? We would need to go, let me go back into the registration. Okay, here we go.
While we're bringing this up, we just want to pause here to note the time. It's almost 11:30, and due to the late start, we will be going past the allotted end time. So if anyone has to leave now, you can catch up on the remaining part of the training by viewing the recording of the training, which we'll post on our website.
Okay, thank you, Brian. So under and thank you all that attended. In case anybody does need to log out early, we appreciate you taking the time to tune into the training today. So under My Focuses, you can enter more than one focus here. So whatever focuses that you anticipate lobbying on, you can disclose them here in this section of the registration in the Lobbying Activities tab. If a focus type is not in the drop-down list, generally for focus types, we don't usually update this list, but if you are concerned about something that you think should be listed here, please send that email to the Lobbying Help Desk, and we will take a look into it and see if there's another selection we think would be appropriate here for you to select that's already on the list, or we would look into possibly adding it to this list. So the new termination process, we are finally able to launch that on the lobbyist side. So just to make a note, clients still send in email their termination letter like they always have to the commission. We're working on getting the client termination end built into the lobbying application. But for the lobbyist, now you are able to submit an entire lobbying contract termination. If the agreement is being terminated earlier than the end date that was initially specified on the registration, and also the auto termination process, which doesn't involve any activity on your end. It's pretty much just the end date of the contract. Once that ends, then the registration is automatically terminated, and it's also automatically terminated at the end of a biennial. So for termination, what you would do is I am going to submit this registration so that I can show you where the termination button is. Okay, so we'll open up the Forms tab in the organization profile. And then you will open up the registration that you're looking to terminate, and you would just select the termination button. And you just want to make sure that, just double check the information here to make sure that this is definitely the registration that you're looking to terminate if you file multiple registrations. And then select the entire lobbying relationship. We also have that information icon here as well again. Select continue. Then you'll be prompted, are you sure you want to terminate this lobbying relationship? You would select the box. You would put the termination effective date. The comment field is optional. That's only if you want to put a comment in there, but it's not required. And then you would just select the attestation box and click submit. And then your termination would be submitted. And you would see that, let me just do this now so that you can see what that looks like here. know if I'll be able to because the end date, nope, we can. So then you would receive the filing submitted. You would receive a termination confirmation number. That's the termination form that's automatically submitted when you submit the termination. And then you could go back to view the filing. And this is a termination request, and this just shows that you actually submitted a termination for this registration. And if you go back into the registration, and when you go back into the registration, you would just select, you would go to agreement information, and then it would appear here as well on your registration statement. Entire lobbying relationship terminated, the effective date 11/2/2023, and you would see that it's now your lobbying authorization contract information is now listed under terminated lobbying agreements. So now I'm going to go back to that question that I skipped over, where you can locate the Ethics for Lobbyists and Clients training course. So we're going to log out. We're going to go back to the main homepage. And then you're going to want to go to the education. You're going to hover over, there's a couple different selections, but you're going to go to education and hover over that. Then you're going to go down to ethics training for lobbyists and clients, and you're going to select that. And you can access the ethical standards for lobbyists and clients training course here. And just be sure to remember that this is where you access the course to do the training, but then you also have to in turn certify in the lobbying application that you took the training if it's a requirement for you. So I think that we answered most all the questions that we could get to today. Any of the questions that we missed, please send those to the Lobbying Help Desk, lobbyinghelpdesk@ethics.ny.gov, and a filing specialist will get back to you. And thank you all for joining today. This is, we had such a great turnout. It was just really nice to see how many people were interested in taking the course with us this morning. Now Marlena is going to come back on, so I am going to stop sharing my screen. And thank you, Brian, as well. You did a great job this morning with the training. And, okay, Marlena, I think we're all set.
Great. Hi, everyone. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. This has been incredibly informative for both, I believe, the filers and for us as well. We've been taking a lot of detailed notes. For everyone who is interested or requires additional assistance, we do have our contact information up on the screen right now. The best mechanism to do is just to email us at the Lobbying Help Desk at ethics.ny.gov. We will make this entire presentation available on our website. Stay tuned for it early next week. We do want to state that this won't be the only training session that we are offering. We were looking at the chat inbox. We understand that folks are interested in doing a demonstration on the bi-monthly. We're also scheduling one on the client semi-annual as well.